Hello. I thought instead of doing a write-up review of Alien Isolation, I'd do a quick video one. So very quickly, just to show you, I have completed the game. There is all 19 missions. Yes, there are actually 19. 18 full missions and then a 19th one, which is kind of a special final section. But that's all 19 missions done. So I have played through the full campaign. I've also done both Crew Expendable and Last Survivor DLC. Of the two DLC, Crew Expendable is a better level laid out design-wise. Last Survivor is really, really nice in the way of kind of small bit of a story bit. It's both deal with the original Alien movie, taking at different points. Crew Expendable is sort of the mid-late film where they've lost the alien's been born and they've lost their first official crew member, Brent, to the alien, and it's essentially cataloging the bit where Dallas goes into the vents to kind of flush the alien out. And Last Survivor is the last moments of the movie where you're playing Ripley on her own just after Parker and Lambert are killed. Excuse me. And you have to set the self-destruction. Crew Expendable has a really interesting middle point that I'll come to later. Last Survivor, it's so, visually mesmerizing doing that segment from the movie, but it underwhelms in that it does cut a lot of bits from the movie out. For example, in the movie Ripley sets a self-destruct, then goes to go to Narcissus, the escape pod, and then is chased off essentially by the alien and tries to reset the self-destruct but doesn't do it in time and then has to go through the whole thing again. I thought it was going to do something like that in the mission. It surprisingly doesn't. It actually jumps to the second run. Essentially, you get told you have 5 minutes to get off the ship, and it doesn't have the very, very final confrontation, which is a shame. Crew Expendable. Anyway, but while I'm talking about this, I'll be playing a bit of Last Survivor, which is the included. Oh, there we go. That's how you choose a character. This is the included kind of challenge mode in the game. They've only put one level in with the intention of adding more at a later date. But at the moment, it's only the one level. This is basically what they're going to have as the entire basis to their DLC. And actually, I think it's a good basis. I think it was a bit cheeky of them to call this a demo and to not actually include either a bit more or just essentially make it not a demo. Actually say, like, here's a challenge mission based off the game. The DLC will have challenge missions based off different movies, like challenge mission based off the first movie, challenge missions based off scenes from Aliens, and challenge missions based off scenes from Alien 3. Alien 3 in particular is what I'm looking forward to. If they do it that way. So my review, I guess the very first thing to get out of the way is I am a huge fan of the Alien franchise. Huge. So I saw my first Alien movie when I was 9 years old. I saw Alien 3 when the rest of my family were watching the 1994 World Cup final. I was in the front room on my own watching Alien 3, which was being shown on one of the TV channels. I think it was Sky Movies. So I am a huge Alien fan. I've watched and consumed everything since then. I mean, between the age of 9 and 12, I saw every Alien movie that was available at that time, because I then went to see Alien Resurrection when it came out in the cinema. So, big Aliens fan. Big fan of the entire franchise. Read most of the... Actually, I could almost say I've read all the comics. I might have missed one or two obscure ones, but I've read all of the main series, definitely. And I've read most of the Alien vs. Predator comics. I have read a lot of the books. which are actually adaptations of comic books most of the time, like Female War and Nightmare Asylum and so on. And I've played pretty much all the video games, definitely all the major titles. Like I played the Alien 3 gun game that Sega did. I played the Aliens arcade, Alien Trilogy on the Sega Saturn. I have it on the Sega Saturn. Various Alien vs Predator titles, so on. So after that kind of clearing my thing, let's get two things out of the way. First of all, very biased review. I'm a big fan of the franchise, so that is going to make the review somewhat biased. The second thing is that I know what I'm kind of talking about when I talk about this in comparison to the rest of the Alien franchise. I have been a massive consumer of it all. So when I say very lightly, this is the best Alien related media title released in the last 20 years. I am not kidding. Okay? Since 1994, I cannot think of any other Alien title, even long enough. Let's say since Aliens. Nothing this good since Aliens. Okay, there might be some arguments towards maybe some of the other video games. And I'm gonna get killed here. No? Wow, I'm very lucky there. I am bizarrely lucky there. I should not have survived that. Yeah, I really should not have survived that. Yeah, so I do think this is a absolutely fantastic addition to the franchise. I think it is an amazing game. So, running down kind of practical elements of it, it's visually fantastic. I think there are problems visually here and there in the way of, you know, it's an engine I think that Creative Assembly have custom made for the game, so it's not like the Frostbite engine or Frostbite Crisis engine where it is the engine itself is beautiful. I think the engine itself clearly has limitations, but I don't have a medkit with this with Ripley. But for recreating the Alien universe, the game is visually outstanding. It's kind of like on the same logic as the Wind Waker, where it is visually stunning for the world it's creating. It may not be actually a technical marvel as an engine, but the world they've created is stunning. It does have its flaws. I think there are some graphical flaws. Firstly, and clearly, the character models for all the human characters who are not primary characters, so any secondary character, especially the ones you kill around the maps, they are fairly poor, I think. There's like 3 or 4 models, skins that are repeated constantly, and they are the They're the same 3-4 models repeated constantly, and they're not, sorry. Why am I giving the flashbang? Flashbang is pretty fucking useless to the alien. It doesn't have eyes. But, yeah, so it's the same 3 or 4 models repeated endlessly. They're not very well detailed. There's no lip sync for them, and they repeat the same few lines over and over. So I will say the models on the extras are very weak. But the models on the characters they want, the primaries, are quite strong. For example, don't know if he saw me. I'm working with the assumption he did. Like the models on characters. Like if you go play the Nostromo Crew Expendable DLC, you get this lovely close-up shot of all the main characters you can play as, and they all look great. Their models do. Their models all look great, but the models of the model of the alien is without a doubt fantastic, and the model of the androids are brilliant. But the human models are a bit weak. The hands, the arms, specifically your arms, as a character moving around, they look a bit odd. I think the wrists are a bit thin, so especially every time I save my data, I always notice the wrist looking a bit weird. It has kind of a very angular turn to it. It bugs me personally. And here we go. I think I got very lucky there. Nope. Not so lucky. Boom! Hey! Yeah, no. Who the hell did this in 28 seconds? Okay, who did it in 1 second, 10 minutes? 10 milliseconds. That's bullshit. That's a fucking hack. Right button. How'd I do? I didn't do too bad. No hiding, engineer. What's no hiding in engineer, I wonder? Oh, I didn't hide anywhere. Okay. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna leave this at the menu for a bit while I say my bit. Visually, like, stunning. Sevastopol is incredibly well realized. You know, I don't think there's been a world beyond the original BioShock that has been so well realized as a place in the K, except for Sevastopol. And Sevastopol, in my opinion, does one better than BioShock in throughout the game of Alien Isolation. You see Sevastopol falling apart even more. There's some clear plot points that the station takes in a greater element of decay and a greater element. And BioShock, that doesn't really happen. In fact, BioShock is a bit weird, where you get the impression that some parts of the city are still running as fine, when other parts are in complete havoc. And Sevastopol isn't like that. Sevastopol, there is a very clear degrading. You return to areas and they become worse and worse throughout the game, and by the end of the game, it's complete utter chaos, and that's great. That really, really, really sells this environment. Outside of graphics, the core gameplay is kind of where I would say the game leads away. The core hiding mechanics, they work. The AI they use for the alien is convincing. I think some people are a bit annoyed because the way it was sold was a sort of kind of completely free alien AI where there was no scripting to it. There is scripting, but not to the way you think. It's not scripting in that the alien is always scripted. It's kind of a smart way of doing it. They've basically scripted that the alien is present in certain scenarios or at certain points, and once it's present, though, it goes off the rails. It's basically given kind of free reign to run any way it wants. But that is when it is present. So for example, there's a very clear early level in the game where it is scripted for the alien to appear. The alien appears, you get a very clear sequence that's all scripted where the alien comes down and unfolds in a very specific manner. But the second it gets released, you can actually see it, the second it gets released from that kind of script, it's suddenly on its own AI, and its movement, once you recognize it, you can tell from its movement whether it's been specifically scripted into a sequence or if it's actually then let loose on its own. For example, another example, there is a much later level where the alien does move again in a very scripted manner, and then it's immediately released from it. And I think I kind of broke it in my playthrough because I immediately hid every time it came in that scripted sequence. I think the developers originally intended for that sequence to be a sort of chase moment where the alien clearly sees you and you're meant to run or fight it off. But because I'm such a nervous player that I was from the get-go hiding, I was inching my way through that area. It was a specific level where I found it to be actually among the most terrifying in the game, and it's a very late level in the game. And the alien shows up after it actually had already been around for quite a while chasing me, but it does this very specific scripted canned action, comes in full view in front of me, but I'd already, well before it actually finished the canned action, had ducked beneath a nearby table, at which point the alien, after doing this really grand entrance, suddenly stops and then goes into the standard seek mode. And you could argue that breaks it, but that is one occasion, and I could probably name 3 in the full game where you get that kind of canned animation that is then let off an alien seek. A lot of the other time it is literally that you're doing mission X, Y, or Z, the alien is going to be present in the following areas as a constant pressure. And when it's that, it is not. The alien is then not scripted. It's then let loose, and it does seem to run under a number of AI kind of programming. The most obvious one is that it is tethered to the player. You can't just run away from it. It'll always be somewhere in your vicinity. And I guess some people are annoyed by that. They don't like the fact that it is there almost all the time. You can't get rid of it. You can't, hide and wait it out. But I think if you could do that, it'd go against the entire sort of philosophy, I'd imagine. The game is this unrelenting pressure. It's like, even when there is a sequence where, no spoiler in the way of plot, but there is a sequence where the alien is no longer an issue for a whole section. You're in an area where it's no longer an issue, and as such, you think the unrelenting pressure will be lifted off. But even with the even in those sequences, they keep the pressure on you using the synthetics, the working Joes, and how they use the synthetics and so on. You can feel the pressure is still there as a constant. The game basically does not let you just sit down and kind of breathe in and take in your surroundings properly. It's kind of actually why collecting collectibles in the game has actually proven quite frustrating, because I normally try to get as many of the collectibles in my first playthrough, and I missed some really obvious ones in the game because at the point that they were available, I was too busy terrified under the table to spend the time to look for them, and instead I was making sure I got through safely. So yeah, unrelenting pressure is the goal of the game, and it's kind of recreating the last 20 minutes of the first Alien movie and then repeating it again and again and again. And yes, some people might find that might get repetitive or boring after a while, or in some cases exhausting, but I'm a big fan of the Alien movies. I loved redoing those 20 minutes, and that core gameplay appealed to me. I really enjoyed it. On the flip side, that is the core gameplay, and it's built into this beautiful package. The core gameplay is this stealth, unrelenting pressure, very specific style, but then it is varied enough, in my opinion. The core is always the same, but it varies sort of the, how do I put it, the context of it. Is that the right word? Again, contrasting to another title, like, say, for example, Dishonored or the Hitman series, other stealth games where a lot of stealth games like Dishonored and so on kind of build on the notion of choice, where you can choose to so I'm just gonna let that run so we have something in the background. Where Dishonored and others choose to give you this choice of how to approach a problem.
It was big.
Alien Isolation doesn't give you a choice on how to solve the problem, but instead it gives you sort of a choice of
My question is,
the circumstances you face the problem in. I guess is the phrase again. Like,
you know, the primary.
and that way what it does is it prefers the core gameplay that work, which is the hiding mechanics, the crafting, and so on. So as I was speaking earlier, you can see here the models here are quite nice. Okay, maybe Ripley has a bit of a big head there, but you know, the Parker model is very nice, and Beardy Dallas models very they're nice models, and the core character models are nice. And like I said, they're nice, but I find the excess characters don't have nice.
Parker, you lead it into the primary air shaft.
Then
Trap it on the lower deck. Then Ash opens the airlock. Lock down the maintenance.
The thing is, the core gameplay works. It's very solid controls, very understanding. It doesn't have any kind of peripheral things. Like, you don't have to worry about like vision cones or anything with the alien. You just got to. It's very intuitive how when you know when the alien's seen you and when it hasn't seen you, and it's kind of the same with a lot of things. In fact, the only group of people I find a bit hard to identify if they've seen me or not are actually humans. Again, coming back to, I say the weakest element is their models. But with the alien, it's very intuitive. It's very easy to recognize by its movement, by how it's making sounds, if it's seen you or not. So it's actually that I find fairly believable, fairly relaxing. And that core gameplay is fun. I mean, the controls for kind of ducking and then peeking around there, to the point now I don't normally like using an Xbox controller with a first-person shooters. I play.
You might want to look around before you go on.
I play.
The specimen seems extremely adaptable.
I play first-person shooters a lot on the PC. I play a lot of Arma. I play a lot of Battlefield and other first-person shooters. I've played Dishonored, so I like using keyboard and mouse. But I will say with this Alien Isolation, I opted for the controller because it is actually so well tuned to it, especially the lean mechanic. I find the lean mechanic works so nicely with it, and that you don't really need to worry about kind of aiming and shooting in Alien Isolation. Like, the main weapon you use in it is a flamethrower. You do get a handgun and a shotgun, but you wouldn't use them against the alien. I've had tried to use them against the alien. They've been absolutely useless. And creatures you do use them against, they're very much a first opportunity weapons. So I find the controls very good. I find the core gameplay satisfying, exciting, challenging. It is challenging gameplay. The game is very challenging. I expect a lot of year-end reviews of kind of not maybe best games, but you know, moments in gaming, that the Med Lab will go down as one of those great scary moments of 2014. Maybe even when they start doing again top 10 all scary moments of video games, or they're naming off like segments of Resident Evil or like the Village in Resident Evil 4, the Med Lab in Alien Isolation will be one people will name, because it is the section when the alien first gets loose. If you go on the forum for Alien Isolation, the official Steam forum, you will actually see a load of posts specifically addressing the moment of the Med Lab, or people wondering how far into the game it is, it doesn't get easier, does it get harder, and so on. And it's just the Med Lab has had such an astounding impact on people. In fact, when I first did my first video on Alien Isolation, it was of the Med Lab. Oh, there we have a graphical error there, and it's fixed. So yeah, I said there's a lot of little graphical things. The graphics aren't perfect, but because they do the world such justice, like the world is so perfectly realized, I give a pass for a lot of those little graphic errors. And that kind of sums up Alien Isolation to me. There are a lot of little problems that maybe some other people would get annoyed about, but because they've realized the world so well, they've realized the mechanics so well. See, look at this floating glass. Look at you floating. They've realized the world so well. they don't bother me as problems. In fact, I still adore the game. I think it's an amazing game. I think, like, literally just this quarter is shown such excellent attention to detail and, you know, realizing of the world that I cannot fault it. I cannot focus on those little problems.
The
I have to
security
say.
system has shut a number of doors, so you'll need to gather equipment en route. Mother isn't really helping the situation, unfortunately. Good luck.
So moving aside
closing the
from
hatch
the core
behind
gameplay, which you can tell I absolutely
That
adore,
doesn't
I don't
surprise me
find
one
any.
little bit.
I don't find any problem with the core gameplay. I think the core gameplay works. I think that is why Creative Assembly have gone and stated that their DLC is going to be primarily built around the survivor mode, because the survivor mode is the core gameplay. It is that core hiding from the alien, moving objective to objective, kind of very direct kind of things that you're going to. It is perfectly satisfying. It's perfectly entertaining. It's challenging. It's terrifying. It's everything you want from an Alien game. So outside of the core gameplay, there's a lot of things. Like the length of the campaign is something a lot of people do. Do I think the campaign's too long? No, I think the campaign is the right length. I would say.
Thanks, Parker. My rights should have been me going in there.
You just remember that.
I would say the problem with the campaign is its focus at points is a bit off. And I don't mean the focus in the way of Alright, I should actually... Let's just address the elephant in the room. There is a segment in the game where the alien goes away, and a lot of people were initially very negative of that segment because the game is meant to be built around the alien, and there's this whole section of the game where instead it changes over to following the androids, kind of dealing with them, and a lot of people are very negative of that section of the game. And me personally, I'm not. I actually found that segment brilliant. In fact, I'd compare it very strongly to, again, we're coming back to BioShock, Fort Frolic from BioShock. I found that whole segment with the synthetics where you're left without the alien to deal with and you're dealing primarily with the synthetics is very reminiscent of Fort Frolic in my mind. I think it's this kind of, you know, it's Fort Frolic is kind of a small bit open, a lot of kind of imagery and, you know, standard villains hidden in plain sight that suddenly pop out at you. And oh shit, I should not have done that. Yeah, alien would be attracted to that sound, so. So yeah, the I found that segment great. There's in fact a specific segment involving a brilliant fake out actually by the game, where it sets it up that it's kind of more the same, where you gotta grab something, you gotta grab a key card and move on, and then so you find out no, the key card's not there, and you're put in the situation that you're actually very uncomfortable with. I actually really enjoyed that segment. There is a section where you're forced to kind of fight that... Well, did I just get two aliens there for a second? Oh no, it's just the way it's moving. Whoosh. So... Sorry. So, yeah, I don't find the segment where the alien goes away to be a... Shit! To be a problematic section. I actually quite enjoyed it. I found it very reminiscent of Fort Frolic and BioShock. In fact, I found it reminiscent of BioShock overall. And I like BioShock, and I like that segment in Alien Isolation, where the campaign falters is... It is actually... Don't look this way, don't look this way. Christ. Where the campaign falters is towards the end. Primarily the final segment. What actually happens in the final segments, there's nothing... I'm not wrong with it. I think story-wise and... I think story-wise, and I think you know, event-wise, what happens is interesting. I just think some of the gameplay mechanics they opt for are kind of disappointing. I don't know if he's following me up here or not. He was kind of. That's technically not realistic to the game. Brent's not meant to be there, but we won't hold it against it. Where do I need to go? I need to go up. But yeah, truthfully told, I mean, it's a lot of minor issues. Like, I think what happens at the end. Oh shit. What happens at the end is not a problem for me. It's, I would have hoped maybe they would spend a bit more on it than what they did. In fact, it's kind of come to what I'm playing at the moment. I'm playing the Crew Expendable DLC, which came with the Nostromo edition of the game, if you pre-ordered. And how the last two segments of this DLC plays out really is how the last of the actual campaign should have gone, but it isn't, and I'll get to it in a second. Basically, in this DLC, there are two things that happen that don't happen in the full game, and frankly, they should have. And that is probably my biggest criticism of the game single player. It's not the length of it; it's the fact that two things happened that I felt were rather short-handed and cheap, but in the actual, turns out it weren't as short-handed and cheap because developers didn't think to do it. Oh, Blade Runner reference.
And lead the creature down to the deck below. I can connect to the airlock systems from my terminal.
It's not because they thought it was cheap. It's shit. Go away. It's not that they thought it was cheap, and it's not that they didn't do it and didn't think of it. It's that they did do it, but they put it in the DLC, and that is bad practice, obviously, and disappointing. It's very disappointing that it's in the DLC and it's not in the full game. And one of those sequences, this one coming up here now. There is this whole sequence here in the DLC, and it's quite short, but it is rather shit-pantingly.
Is it gonna work?
It is rather shit-pants fulfilling, where you actually have to go through air vents, and the alien in the air vents with you. It's actually a funny thing in the game movie. The alien is capable of going through air vents in the game, but it rarely does. It only comes through them if you actually tempt it into them, like
yes, it's in there with you.
give it a reason to.
Right around there. You're gonna have to be careful.
But in this, it's full on in here with me, and that's terrifying. And you actually have to do this whole sequence without a light, with limited flamethrower fuel, and I've only been able to do it once so far, and it has shit.
Go left.
It has made me shit my pants.
Okay, that's it.
Because you can't use your motion tracker inside the fence.
Move! Get out of there! Move! Left.
Give me 1 second.
Right.
Oh yeah, I made it through that time. Whew. And we leave into this segment. This literally should have been the ending to the full game, this segment here. And where it's you in a very small area and you actually have to trap the alien in an airlock. And I'm very disappointed that this was not the ending segment to the game. full game. That it is here. They have done it. They have been able to do it. They do a very tight segment where you actually have to trap the alien in the airlock in the DLC, but it's not in the full game. And that annoys me. Does it annoy me to the point that I would give the game a negative review? No, because again, the core gameplay of Alien Isolation is brilliant. The core gameplay works.
I'm connecting you into the airlock system.
The core gameplay works. The core game mechanics are solid. Controls are solid. The gameplay is solid. Feedback, everything, that's all perfectly solid. Audio-wise, the game is absolutely perfect. Like, I can't. The only criticism I have to audio is what I said earlier, that some of the audio files for the humans gets repeated over for the excess cast. That's like literally my only criticism of the game in the way of characters and audios and visuals. It's always those excess characters and Ripley's bony arms, which are far too thin for their own good. But sorry, am I meant to be waiting? Yeah, I'm meant to evade the alien. Yeah, but because I haven't unlocked that door. But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I've played through the whole single-player campaign on hard.
Wait for it to enter the outer airlock chamber and be ready to close it in.
And I adored playing the single-player game. I enjoyed every bit of it from a gameplay mechanic. I enjoyed every bit of it from a, you know, terrifying myself, enjoyment, so on. I loved it. I think there could be improvements to the story. I don't think there's anything wrong with the story in the way of
Something strange happening here.
sorry. Right, I need to hide. Where I think the game... So the game excels in so many specific areas that I am fond of. Okay, wait.
It's moving in the right direction.
Let's see what happens if I get it to go into the airlock. Oh crap. Okay. Ah, god damn it. Anyway. I'll restart checkpoint in a moment. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the game. I think it's a great game. I think it's a solid 80 out of 100 game, if from gamer's perspective. But I do think it's also a very much an Alien game. It's one for fans, by fans. And kind of talking on the wider sort of things, I mean, this is a proper game by fans. It's fans being really respectful of the source material, honouring the source material, genuinely showing a love for the detail of it and stuff. I mean, to take a comparison to Aliens Colonial Marines, which is also a game claimed to be by the fans,
It's here.
for the fans sort of game.
This better work.
This is so much more because
I'm opening the
Alien
outer
Colonial
airlock, but it'll
Marines
take time. Find somewhere to hide.
feels like bad. It feels like a game done by fans who wrote really bad fan fiction because they didn't like what the movie filmmakers had done with their favorite character or something, and so they trying to retcon the whole thing. Yes, I'm trying not to spoil. I know I really shouldn't spoil. Shouldn't care about spoiling or not spoiling parts of Alien Colonial Marines. But yeah, there are parts of Alien Colonial Marines which feel like really bad fan fiction. And Alien Isolation doesn't. Alien Isolation never feels like bad fan fiction. It feels like a genuine love for the universe and a genuine attempt to replicate a lot of elements of that universe.
Airlock is primed.
Truthfully,
if they be ready to close it in.
Truthfully, if you took away the rest of the Alien franchise, let's say you just had Alien.
It's moving in the right direction.
Alright, that didn't work. If you just had Alien and none of the sequels, like no Aliens, Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection, if you just had Alien, you said, no sequels were made since 1979 until now, and someone decided to make a sequel to Alien now. Alien Isolation, the storyline to Alien Isolation would be the story you'd see. You would see one focusing on Ripley's daughter. You would see sort of the elements of the original film scattered around it and things. And that's the thing, the characters and the events of Alien Isolation was done from a film perspective. In fact, we can say this reviewer now to discussing the story part. If it was done from a film perspective, and it's actually a shot film and wasn't a video game, it would be a great story. It would be an actual compelling, interesting take on the universe, interesting characters, not outright regurgitation of characters we knew. I like the idea of Sikhs and coming to basically the bargain bin version of the company with the bigger companies more in the background. That was all very interesting. I liked the Working Joes. I liked the kind of there's people representing the company there, but they're not actually all mustache twirling bad guys. Some are ignorant of what's going on. But it's not a movie, it's a video game, and I would say the biggest misgiving to the game's storyline is that it's in a game. There are a lot of parts of Alien Isolation where you feel the storytelling chops have been limited because it's being told within a video game. And that if it wasn't in a video game, where there wasn't these very clear artificial limitations where they have to put characters behind glass rooms and stuff to stop you from interfering with the plot. Ah, shit. Interfering with the plot?
Something strange happening here.
This time I got the fucker. Alright, so if it wasn't actually that it wasn't in a game where they actually have to take into account the player's actions, like for example in this actual DLC you come face to face to Ash very early on, you could set fire to him and reveal he's an android because you as a player know that, but in the game they actually have to do a sort of like, oh, you failed your mission every time you try to do that.
It's moving in the right direction.
You're in the fucking airlock this time. Okay. So you can't kill the alien in this DLC. That's a pity. I thought you could. But if the actual end part of Alien Isolation played like that, I'd be very happy. Sadly, it doesn't. It kind of tries to hit on the same idea, but it also very firmly cheaps out of it with a very
It was a slim chance at best.
disliked
We'll have to
game mechanic that pops up in a lot of other games that people dislike, and yes, I'm very critical of that. I think they should have done
Bring back life form.
very similar to this, where it's you,
Priority
one alien, boom, out the
All other
airlock,
priorities rescinded.
sort of open-ended gameplay.
You can't. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you?
That is actually not. Is it Ian Holmes? No, it's not actually Ian Holmes. It's a.
Its structure.
They got someone to
perfection is
impersonate
matched
because it's
only by
not
its
dialogue from the
hostility.
movie.
I admire its purity.
But they did get a load of other
survivor.
characters from the movie. Sigourney Weaver did do dialogue before the game,
Unclouded
as did
by conscience,
pretty much every other
remorse,
cast member apart
or
from
delusions of
Ian Holmes
morality.
and what was his name? John Hurt.
Last word.
The only two who don't reprise their roles.
I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
So, yes, I love this game. I have put well over 30 hours into it now. I absolutely enjoy playing it. I think the core gameplay works. I think it visually works. Audio is without question works. I don't think the campaign's too long. I have a lot of little nitpicks, and it's easier to point out little nitpicks. Like I said, I think the ending, if it wasn't for the fact that I played Crew Expendable, and Crew Expendable clearly does it better, I wouldn't be complaining about the ending as much. The ending I'm mostly complaining about because I've looked at the DLC that they did after launch and gone, that is exactly what the ending should have been, but it isn't. I kind of trailed off earlier, but yes, there is no sequence specifically in vents in the full game that you like there was in Crew Expendable. There's no sequence where specifically you have to go through vents. The alien can enter vents at any point, but unless it essentially learns that you tend to spend a lot of time in vents, it rarely does. And so if you know that and you're careful not to make it aware that you've been using events a lot, it will not. I've only once in the game become very aware that the alien had copped on that I used events a lot and was basically camping them out to kill me. That was very late in the game when I was trying to get through an area, and I kept going to the vents, and I became aware that every time I went to the vents, the alien seemed to have gotten wise to me using the vents, because I used them on the way in through the same area when there was the alien chasing me. So when I was trying to go back out using the vents, the alien had learned to start checking them. So on my way out, I intentionally avoided the vents, and I was actually able to get through the area. So, but there is no vent level in the game, and that's kind of disappointing, because if there was one, even if it was on the same length as there was in Crew Expendable, it still would have been one of those nice little highlights, especially towards the end of the game. You know, that like sequence where you had to go through the vents, and you know there's an alien loose in there, and you know your scanners don't work in vents, so you can't look into it, and you're relying on the flamethrower to light up around you. That would have been very, very nice, but it isn't. And what is there in the game is fun. They varied it up enough throughout it that I'm happy. The levels are all nice and interesting. They develop nice and interesting, and I have fun through the game. Where I don't have fun, I don't know. Little nitpicks there, here and there. Even though I was playing on hard, the crafting system is nice, and I actually like what you can make in it. I do think the flamethrower is maybe a bit strong. I did think fuel for the flamethrower was a bit plentiful. I think I ended the game with about 300 liters of fuel, not liters, but 300 whatever the substance units of fuel left for my flamethrower, and I had all my devices maxed out and all